I'm really excited about this. This is going to be awesome. Scott Hughes is here, political analyst. So last week you were in Orlando, and you came in. I said, so of the 4 candidate interviews, how many did you get a chance to listen to? How up to date are you? You said all 4. I was listening to you guys in Orlando in my meetings. That was awesome. Thank you. What did you hear? What do you think? What of the 4, from Perkins to Taliaferro, Savage, and Jackson, was there anything that any of the 4 said that sort of caught your interest?
I think when you listen to those 4 candidates, you're listening to 4 people playing for second place. I think they kind of know it. They're trying to figure out where they're going to get their votes. And they're more consistently focusing on the themes they're probably hearing out as they walk the streets, which are crime, the water and sewage / corruption that people like to say. And then more and more we're starting to hear about jobs. That's starting to rise.
Are you surprised, because I didn't note that in your voice, are you surprised, and we talked about the polls, I don't know what you've seen, that Miss Ali is on top?
No, I'm not surprised. First off, I'm not a big poll guy. I've mentioned that before on your show. I believe polls are sort of a snapshot in time, and I think you need to see a consistent poll over time to see if there's movement or if there's consistency. Now, I hear y'all have 2 polls that may show some consistency, so there may be some good takeaway, but I'm not surprised. I think I said 2 months ago, I thought Ali opened at 35%. She's the incumbent. I haven't seen anything that the candidates have done to draw her much below that. She may be around 30% today. So I think she's going to lead the primary unless something outstanding happens in this race in the next 4 or 5 weeks.
Let me is it surprising to you, because it just from the cultural zeitgeist, if you will, of Shreveport right now, when you say to me that 30% or 35%, that Ali has that number, give or take. So what you're saying to me is that 30 or 35% of Shreveport voters are looking around going, yeah, we're kicking it. We're doing good. 4 more years. Is that what you're telling me?
No, I don't think that's how I describe it. I think first, when you look at an election, remember that probably only maybe 40% of our electorate will go vote in this race.
You think it'd be that high?
It may be. We have school board races. We have city council races.
Right.
There are a lot of local races that people are going to be more engaged in. So we might hit 40%. That'd be a ceiling. I'll say it like that. And so that means 6 in 10 people are not going to go vote at all. So those 40% who are engaged, now that's who we're looking at when you poll. A decent poll should only be polling that 40% who might go vote. And when you go look at that, there's still going to be people that answer the question, we have a mayor's race. After all you've done, after all everyone's done, many people in this market have no clue there's a mayor race. Now, the second to that is, I'm not saying they think that Ali's kicking it, to use your term, Robert, but I do think they're looking at it saying, I don't see anyone in the other field that's better than what I have. And there's an old saying that the enemy I know is better than the enemy I don't. And these other candidates may not have done anything yet to earn that vote. And keep in mind, even when I'm saying Ali may have 30, 35%, that still means 2 in 3 voters are not going to vote for her on the primary day.
And that means that those folks are not happy with what she's been doing. So how does she win in the runoff?
The runoff, it's 2 separate races. I mean, it sounds simple, but it's 2 separate races. Race 1 is who can get to the runoff. And I think you had some numbers this morning, or some rankings of that.
Didn't you say, what did you say before? You think number X will get you in
I think 20% gets you in second place. If Ali is 30 or 35%, and the second place, and figure Ali's 30, 35%. There are 3 candidates who collectively might get 5%.
One of them showed her at like 27.
And that's reasonable.
Okay.
That's around 30. And so that means the other 4 legitimate candidates, as many of us that watch this race say, they're going to basically be splitting 55, 60 points. And so someone that gets 20%, a third of that vote, is going to probably make the runoff.
Which brings us to the rumor, the not so unsubstantiated rumor of a possible deal made a month, 2 months, 3 months ago between Taliaferro and Savage, the 2 on the Republican side, that when enough polling data comes in, the one who is behind, the one who is in second, will withdraw and throw his support to whoever of the 2 is leading.
In an attempt to get the Republican in the runoff, obviously.
I think Republicans are very concerned about their situation.
Keep going.
If you're asking about the deal, I don't know anything about a deal. I'm not a big fan of deals. Deals always seem to make sense when you're filing and everyone's shaking hands and everyone's happy. And then you get 2 months into a race and you've put your personal money in and your political career's on the line, and nobody ever seems at that point to want to back out. Now, if there's a deal, or if there was a deal, let's look at the deal. The deal probably was something akin of whichever one of us is leading, the other one will drop out. Well, the visual in your brain is one of us is going to be at 60%, the other is going to be at 40 or 70-30. I think what you have, even based on the two polls that you kind of outlined this morning, they seem to have a consistent first place, Ollie. They seem to have a consistent third place, Steven Jackson.
And actually, Steven was 5.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
on the
That
Dem
really
side.
surprised me.
Right.
But what that really means is that means in spots 2, 3, and 4, the critical spots 2, 3, and 4, that means both Taliaferro and Savage are right there. If you're looking at the Republican issue alone, that means they very likely are separated by 1 or 2 percentage points.
Like I say, it's
so
one
who's
thing-
going to drop out?
It's one thing to say I'll withdraw if you're
killing me,
if you're
yeah.
kicking my ass. But on the other hand, what if every poll says it's 19 to 18 and a half?
No one's going to withdraw. You don't know what's going to turn up on Election Day. And then you get to the second race. I said it's a 2-race
Yes.
scenario. The second race is even more important. And I've looked at that. Anyone can do this themselves. Draw yourself a little box across the top, write the 5 major candidates. Across the left side, down the left column, write the 5 major candidates, and start looking at the potential second-round matchups. And that's really where the rubber hits the road. If you assume Ollie is in, then look at the Tyler versus Jackson race, the Tyler versus Perkins race, the Tyler versus Savage, and the Tyler versus Taliaferro. And run the numbers in your head. Understand in December, when the second race takes place, there'll be less voter turnout. Traditionally, the box gets older, it gets whiter, it gets conservative.
Right.
So who has the advantage the second round? And you start looking at that, and you start seeing some real potential challenges.
Do you see the Jackson or Perkins endorsing Tyler at that point after going through this, year-long campaign of she's awful?
I don't see Jackson endorsing anybody if he doesn't get in the race. I think Jackson would likely sit out. You can ask Steven that question. I just don't think, given the politics there, that he would endorse Miss Tyler. As far as Perkins, I don't know what Perkins would do. Perkins has a legitimate shot to wind up in the runoff against
What you're
Ollie.
telling me
But
is,
wait. Your question, what you just said, was called out to people this weekend. Because this firm, JMC, did a call on Saturday. Their first question was, who are you voting for today? Their next 2 questions, and I want to see what you think about this. Their next 2 questions were between Ollie and Leo and Ollie and Jim. And the last 2 questions were whether I liked or disliked Leo Savage and liked or disliked Jim Taliaferro. What do you make of that?
It's a sophisticated attempt to answer the second round. They're doing exactly what I did. They're not worried about the first round. They're looking at the second round. The second question is the most important. Who do you like in the runoff?
So
Who do you like, Ollie versus Lee, Ollie versus Jim? And that answers the one I think that real Republicans are looking at. It's not just enough. And I think one of y'all made a comment earlier about we want to make a deal to get in the runoff, or one of your callers did,
Sure.
your texters did. That's a pretty good question. It's not about just making the runoff. It's which one has an actual chance to win the runoff.
If, in fact, what you just said is true, and I tend to think you're usually right, if the general election, the runoff, is less of a turnout, older, whiter, etc. What you're telling me is that that Taliaferro Savage deal becomes even more appealing.
The Republican
More important.
If a Republican candidate can get there, they're going to have a legitimate chance. Their percentage of the box will go up the second round. Now, many people that have looked at this
So,
race,
pardon
I've
me,
talked
if
to,
a Republican can get to the runoff, you think they have a pretty good chance?
I wouldn't say pretty good. They have a chance. I would say they have a puncher's chance. I actually personally think that Tyler versus Savage is in Tyler's favor. I think that she will carry most of the African-American vote. I think Lee will carry the Republican vote, but Tyler will still get moderate crossover vote. She has some of that traditional Democratic white and some white Republican vote. I think Tyler versus Taliaferro becomes interesting. I think Jim may have a better chance to. You saw the race where he went for city marshal. He may have some chance to make some crossover vote. That's what they're polling in that second poll that you saw.
Right.
And I think Tyler versus Jackson. I think Tyler beats Jackson very easily. And then Tyler versus Perkins becomes interesting as well. Perkins will get some white vote. He'll get some Republican vote, but he also can fight Tyler head up in the African American community. So I think Perkins and Taliaferro are the 2 greatest challenges for Miss Tyler the second round, and that's what I think she's worried about.